Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Sims 4 speed build video. And today I am going to be building Metropolis. So basically, a lot of things that I need to run down before I talk about this, but this is going to be my first in a long line of film reviews and Sims builds where I get to talk about a film I've watched whilst building something that is inspired by the film I've watched. But a quick checklist before we get straight into it. I have been having a few comments lately regarding my audio, so please tell me if you're having difficulty understanding me. From the gist of it, what I've heard is that it's just really difficult to hear me, like the quietness of it. So I'm gonna try my best to speak a little louder. It's just normally when I'm relaxed and I'm not actively talking to someone, I do tend to talk a little bit quieter. When I'm talking to someone, I do get quite a bit more hyperactive and a little bit louder. But it's just such a weird notion to me to just kind of talk to the wall and have the same amount of enthusiasm as I normally would. But what I've done differently today is that one, I've gone back to my old mic. So I had a new mic in around March. I've gone back to my old mic, which is a stand mic rather than a handheld mic. I'm talking a little bit further away from my mic. I used to be a little bit closer, and I'm now sitting completely up instead of slightly slouched as I normally would. The only issue about this is that I can't see my build anymore because my setup is really weird because I use a tripod instead of like an actual camera tripod, so it's a little bit weird. But hopefully, fingers crossed, my audio is legible. If it's not, I probably have to fork out money for a even more expensive mic, but I like doing what I do, so I'll find a way around it. Don't worry about me. But anyway, that is the little checklist that I had going on. I told you guys that I was going to make something to do with Superman, and I originally thought I was going to do the Fortress of Solitude. I thought I was going to do maybe even the Justice Hall, but then I thought to myself, what's the point of doing necessarily the Justice Hall? Because what I'm trying to do is create builds that, yeah, you can download it if you love Superman and you love all things to do with Metropolis, but then you can also download it if you don't. This is generally what I did in my research, like off of the knowledge I already know about Superman and the Superman universe. Um, this is basically inspired off of New York, specifically in the 1940s. So if you do like a little bit of a New York styled build, because I know San Machino is a mix of like three cities, and there's only a little bit of New York inspiration compared to Bridgeport, which we had in The Sims 3, which was ultimately New York. This time around, I thought I'd do it this way. So now I know you're probably thinking, okay, EmeraldStories, why didn't you create this in San Machino then if you're creating something to do with Superman and New York, if that's the most New York style place? I think San Machino is a great place if you want to do something to do with New York. The only issue is I did make my Gotham build there, if you want to check that out. But the thing is with San Machino is a lot more gritty, specifically in the New York inspired parts. It's very gritty. And I just knew that with Gotham build that I did, I want all of us to use our imaginations and imagine that this. Don't know too much about San Francisco, so you might need to check me here. But I want you guys to imagine the lake that sits in between SEQUIOA. Imagine that actually is connecting to the waters of Bridgeport and Bridgeport of San Machino. So just imagine, like, do you know how I've built, if you go watch the Gotham build, I built it next to the water near the harbor area, which is very kind of distinctive to Gotham. I want you just to imagine that like that is the space between here and San Sequoia. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense. And they both have bridges. So I feel like with a I mean, that's what you have to do when you're playing The Sims. Use a lot of imagination. With a lot of imagination, I hope you can see how those two could potentially fit in together. Kind of missed talking with my hands. It feels like I'm in an interview compared to how I used to do it with the hand. Like the other one, it's just the problem is this way is a lot more set up because I have a small bedroom. I do this all in my bedroom and I'm not really I have to like unpack everything in order to set up this microphone, but I kind of miss talking with my hands. I feel more free, I feel more enthusiastic. I feel as if I don't know, I feel like my thoughts are more interested maybe. I don't know, you guys have to tell me about that. So yeah, that's why I decided to build in Santa Sequoia. Then Santa Sequoia is just a little bit brighter, and Metropolis is known to be the brighter sister city. Well, no, Gotham's the sister city. I think Metropolis is like the little brother. But yeah, so that's why I decided to build it the way that I am. That and since Sequoia is one of the only other places, because the other contender was probably Saudade and Morada, but the only issue with that is that I didn't have direct access to water the way that I do in San Sequoia. So I was like, San Sequoia could potentially be a better fit. That and in San Sequoia, it's very similar to Saudade and Marada and San Machina. You can see a lot of like high rises in the background, not nearly as immersed as San Martino, but it still does the job. And I feel like again, imagination, you could potentially, you know, think of it that way. But as you can see, I've already finished building the Daily Planet. That was very quick of me. It took me much longer to do. Obviously it's sped up, but to build the Daily Planet was really difficult because the Daily Planet itself is quite extravagant as it is. Both in the film and the comics, it's very it's a massive planet on top of an almost Empire State looking build, not Empire State, but a very massive New York looking building. So it was already quite difficult to think of how do I do this? How do I make it look as if it comes together? And I like to think I did kind of make it look like the Daily Planet a little bit, not a lot. The problem is when you're making builds like this is everything has to be a little bit smaller. Everything has to be a little bit smaller in order to fit this kind of village looking like style. So it can look dense, but it can also look alive and look quite realistic. Ignore what I'm doing with these towers. I was trying to make it like one to one with LexCorp in the Superman film, the 2025 one. It wasn't working out, so I ended up making it a bit smaller because I needed to have something in the background that had a lot of windows, but not actually make a building with a lot of windows because I don't, it wouldn't have fit onto the lot. Because the problem is when you build in things like this, my Gotham build is on a 30x30 and this is a 40x30. I think it's because you just don't want it too big because there's not going to be a lot of Sims on your lot. At the end of the day, this is a residential and not a lot of Sims will be here like a proper city. So you need to make it in a way that it feels big enough and feels right enough to be a city, but it's also small enough that you can't tell that there's actually no movement there at all. I did try and fit it in with a lot more cars than I did with Gotham. Gotham was a lot more gritty. It was a lot darker. It was a lot more. You could just feel the vibes of it being Gotham. But here, I wanted to make it this big metropolitan city, as it is Metropolis. So that's how I ended up making it look this way. I just wish that we had some sort of build or buy item. Potentially, we'll probably build very similar to the post player, where you can just kind of like place an item down and it can basically create an illusion of crowds. I think we had this in Sims 3 Showcase or something like that, where Showtime, I think, where we could place an item down and it could look like those crowds. And it would be really cool if we ever get a music inspired expansion pack or game pack or whatever, if we were able to have an item that does that. So you can make it look like there was crowds in concerts. So for example, oh my god, Simpsy, hi, listen to me, I've got a cool idea. So if we had that item, I think it'd be really cool if we place down that item, we can toggle it to whatever venue or event. We can just like right click it the same way we can with effects. So you know how in Get Famous we have that effect think it'll be really cool if we're able to get that and basically toggle this audience thing to make it into either a shadowy kind of audience that you have here in the very, very back. You can have it almost look like Sims, kind of like 3D kind of hologram kind of thing. So if you want to build like stadiums or anything like that, and then you can also kind of toggle them to look like a general crowd. So do you know how in the game itself we always have cars going up and down in the background? It'll be like that, but with people and wherever you're at. Obviously, there will be like a lot of restrictions with this because they might just end up going to buildings. But if you do it in a way that they ignore walls and walls don't become a thing, I feel like it will be a lot of fun. And I don't know, I think it's a really cool idea and it can make things look a little bit more alive because a lot of us can't have more than 20 Sims, and 20 Sims is the maximum that we can have in a lot of buildings unless you like cheat your way out of it. So it'll be really cool to be able to have that feature for everyone who likes to feel like things are more alive. Like imagine how busy the schools will look. It wouldn't look as empty as they do. And oh, I'm dreaming. I feel like a dream. And maybe there's a mod. If there's a mod like that, please comment that down below. I really would love that. What you guys are seeing at the moment is me building what originally was supposed to be Superman's apartment, but as I did it and I was placing on the debug like high rises just so it can actually look like a very busy city, it ended up overtaking that entire building, and I honestly didn't mind because I also thought it was a bit weird why I put Superman's building right next to Lexical, because that would be a very clear indicator that, spoiler, Clark Kent is Superman. So I just thought it was gonna be, I thought it was like a good sign. Like I think that's the thing is about building a lot with me because I also like directing short films and stuff like that, and then I like writing books. The whole entire creative process of doing these things, it's a lot of, it's not going to go the way that you exactly think it's going to do. It's actually going to come out a lot better. And the things that annoy you that don't come out right, you can be really thankful for them because it ends up making everything so much more easier. And that's how I generally feel that I was not able to actually utilize this apartment that I'm taking a lot of time to make because I didn't even like it that much anyway. So I thought it was a bit ugly. So yeah, that's a little bit of fun. But anyway, this is a film review and a build. So I need to talk about the film. I absolutely loved it. Now I'm gonna talk about one thing, spoiler alert. There's gonna be a lot of spoilers in this. So if you haven't watched Superman, come back when you've watched it, or if you don't mind spoilers, okay, I'm gonna have a lot of spoilers here. Um, I am a bit biased because Superman is my favorite hero of all time, and that is my favorite superhero of all time. So I was just gonna enjoy whatever they gave me, anyways. Give me Clark Kent in any universe except for maybe Injustice universe, maybe not that Clark Kent, but give me any other Clark Kent, and maybe not Justice Lords either. But give me any other Clark Kent except for them. I'm always gonna love him, and I'm always gonna just find an intrigue in his story, and he's just my favorite. I just love characters with a lot of hope and a lot of stubbornness for good. I love characters that when they talk about that they want to do good, they're not just talking about it in a way that I want to do good because I want to avenge someone. I want to do this is me not poking fun of the Avengers guys. Um, not they don't want to just do good because they want to avenge someone. Because I love Bruce Wayne. He's literally my favorite character, second favorite character in DC, and my second favorite superhero ever. His MO, I do wonder sometimes, and I think there's been some comics that have touched upon this, but I haven't read a lot of things to do with the Batman universe where they do discuss what Bruce Wayne could have been like if his parents would have died. But I don't know what Kirk could have been like if he stayed with, if Krypton didn't, you know, perish or anything like that. But I feel like he's just got, I don't like saying that, but I prefer characters who have this innate goodness in them because I do also like people who fight for their goodness. I do love characters that go on redemption arcs and fight and try the best to be good, even though they were born in a situation where they should be anything but good. But there's just this genuine sort of goodness within Clark's character that I've always liked with Superman. I mean, except for the Injustice universe. And if you guys don't know what the Injustice universe is or the Justice Lords, I'm probably confusing the two, so please correct me in the comments if I am. But basically, in one of the universes, Lex Luthor, Superman's arch nemesis, goes too far, and Superman, like Batman, has no kill rule. So no matter how difficult things get and how just generally annoying things have become for them, they don't kill the characters. I don't know about that rule, but you know what, I like that they stand by it regardless of any situation, because I don't like characters that have no kill rules until it comes to their specific loved ones, and then they go crazy because they, as much as you may think, oh, but that should be like something that they allow, it gets really annoying because these are normally the same characters that are yelling at everyone else to not kill as well, even when it's their specific loved ones. So it is, I like them because I like Superman, and sometimes Batman does it. Sometimes Batman like goes to people and says, "Don't kill this person," da, 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 da. And it's just like, I don't know. I really like Clark Kent. Anyway, um, so he's got a no kill rule, but he does break it because Lex Luthor takes it too far. He um takes out the Flash, and then Superman takes Lex Luthor out. And after that, I think it is the Justice Lords, because after that he begins to call himself Lord Superman, and it becomes a whole thing where he becomes almost like a very dictator like figure within the comics, where he is basically overruling everyone, lording over everyone basically, and creating this united police front for the entire world. And basically that no kill rule is completely out the window, and anyone can just get it. So it is not um it is something that he only ever breaks in that universe, but most of the time Superman adheres to his no kill rule no matter how difficult it gets. And within this movie, it gets really, really difficult. Compared to a lot of Superman movies and TV shows such as Smallville that I've watched, this is a film that from the get-go you see a lot of hurt for Superman. Like within the first few minutes of the film, the first actually appearance of Superman himself is him crash landing into the Arctic to go to his ship because he has been severely hurt by a fight that he had, which was coordinated by Lex Luthor himself. So it makes you feel quite sad on the get-go. You feel really sorry for this guy. And the themes of Superman is just honestly so great, because as we go through the film, there's so many instances where you think, yeah, I would have given up at this point, but he just doesn't, and it's quite inspiring. A lot of films don't feel as inspiring as that. A lot of films feel like revenge, anger, avenge, all of these other things, and I think that's just the spiral that we've been on for quite some time when it comes to all types of action films. And it's really good to have a film just about not giving up, not in the sake of revenge or revengement, but in the sake of you have hope, you have faith, you have just the passion to continue going, to the passion to continue doing good, and just to make sure that no one dies, and to just make sure that the vision, the dream that you have is idealistic, as childish as it may seem, that it pulls through. And I just really love those themes within Superman. It was really fun to see. Well, it wasn't fun. I kind of cried a little bit was watching it, but it was really fun to see where it goes with this character, where Clark was going, where Superman was, and it was an interesting meld between the two. And a lot of times we do see them quite in a lot of medias and sometimes comics, but not as often, because comics you get to know them a little bit more. But often within visual media, moving visual media, like movies and TV shows, do you sometimes see the clear cut lines between Superman and Clark? You don't really see Kal-El. And some people have different opinions about this, but I see Kal-El as the middle point of Clark and Superman. It's not necessarily Superman, it's not necessarily Clark, because they are both personas, one more himself than the other. For example, I would believe that Superman is more Clark Kent than he is Superman, but I feel like Kal-El himself, his Kryptonian name, his actual birth name, is the good midpoint that the two have. And it's really good to see. It was really good to see a film where you see that blend so clearly, because often it's normally very like sharply contrasting with each other. Like he doesn't know whether he's Superman, he doesn't know whether he's Clark, but there was a unity within this film where it was just like he's not Superman or Clark, he is both, and both of them just don't want people to die. And um, I've always liked that aspect as I'm just like I've always liked that aspect as if I'm talking about it as if I made the film, but it is a film review. So and it's I don't know if I should call it. Sorry, I'm touching my keys. I don't know if I should call it a film review because it's not really. I don't know. It's not a critical review. I'll say that it's not a critical review because I really like this film. So I would say I don't know. I like it a lot when people discuss these things because often, especially with superhero films, because most of the films I've watched this year has been to do with superhero identity and identity and who you become. And I feel like that was like the kind of talking point of a lot of superhero films a lot way back when, like 2 years ago. There was a massive talking point of, am I Spider-Man? Am I not Spider-Man? Am I Captain America? Am I not Captain America? Even though that being said, Captain America versus Steve Rogers, eh, but Captain America versus Sam Wilson, that is a key talking point because that isn't that wasn't his inception. That was in his initial comeuppance. He was the Falcon. So when we talk about Captain America versus Sam Wilson, and when he's talking about his identity issues with that version of himself, that is important because that is a legacy that he's taken on, a legacy that is going to be very divided, and we have seen it has become very divided, with the whole amount of people saying that's not my Captain America and stuff like that. So I feel like that is when it's necessarily valid to talk about because it is an important instance. I'll say another instance as well is with Yelena and the whole mon- moniker of being Black Widow's sister or become of being an ex Black Widow and being all of these things and being a villain and coming into herself and all of these kinds of things. I think that's important as well to discuss because that is redemption. That is her again leading on a legacy, trying to find her path. I mean, a lot of Thunderbolts was just trying to talk about how a lot of important issues, specifically, especially about depression, but another important talk on Yelena as well was the need to feel something and the need to be something and the whole little sister trope of your big sister's gone now, you feel like as if you need to fill in her shoes and everything like that. So I feel like identity is key in those specific instances. But within Superman, I like that we weren't discussing that. We were just discussing about what it means to be good and how hard you're willing to fight for it and how you just keep going regardless. So I like that in Superman. We weren't necessarily, I think in the future films, I think James Gunn is probably going to touch upon the identity issue, especially when it comes to Superman interacting with a lot of other heroes. Because in this film, he didn't really interact with too many other heroes. I know Hal Jordan was there and everything with the Justice Gang and everyone. But I know that once we get a more foundational understanding of these other heroes in this universe, I think that's when we're going to see more of the identity issues come into play because that is when he is like forced into a situation where he has to be like, I'm around other superheroes now versus I'm around people who I also feel deeply connected to, like Lois Lane and his parents and everything like that. So I feel like that's where the identity issues are going to come into play. And I think Superman's identity issues are very, very valid as well. I don't want to make it seem as if they're not something that I still believe needs to have a conversation. They do, because I feel like a lot of instances, a lot of people face this weird juxtaposing feeling within themselves where they feel as if they're playing two different parts of themselves. They're trying to find a unity in that. But I like how there was just this instant unity within this film, and I would not be opposed at all for him to further discuss that with his next films because it will be very interesting because a lot of times, especially with Smallville or Man of Steel, we see how his comeuppance kind of ends up clashing with his original self and how that can cause identity issues. But I would also like to see how in the new films how his establishedness I don't think that's a word, but his established nature ends up clashing with other heroes because he is also um now having the time and the respite to really come into himself and realize, oh, this is now who Superman is. I mean, it's like he was so focused in this film with everyone, he didn't really focus too much on himself. And I feel like in the next film, that's when we're really gonna probably explore that aspect of him. But it was just, God, it was so good. A good play by play of it is that, so at the beginning we just see him very upset. We see him very down. We see that he has just lost a war, lost a battle to Lex Luthor, and we start seeing the beginning stages of how the orchestration of chaos to distract the fact from the initial and maybe more immediate issues. I think that was an important thing and a very interesting thing that they quite explicitly talked about. It's normally spoken about quite implicitly within superhero films, but it was really interesting to see how they really do discuss that. Hey, this billionaire over here decided to orchestrate chaos on the side in order to distract from the fact that they are trying to buy a country. And it was very open, very contemporary, very important to this current climate that we live in, where we see actively a lot of people in a lot of power trying to distract us from the fact that they are actively destroying a country and actively multiple countries actually in order for financial gain. And I liked that they were not shy about that. I liked that they actively pushed that and they said, guys, this is in your face, don't listen to these guys. And what I really love the most about that is that it's had the fan experience with it afterwards. I saw a few TikTok videos after watching the film where someone was like, really and truly, why were you guys listening to Lex Luthor talking about Superman? Obviously, Lex Luthor is a liar. You've seen him. He's just been on something absolutely menacingly crazy for the entire time, and now you're going to listen to him when he's talking about Superman. And one thing that we'll have to say, one thing that I didn't get, and that's probably my own fault, and it's probably my own fault, is that within the film, when we find out that basically within the film as well, Clark listens to his birth parents' message for him when he enters Earth and what he should do to Earth, but it's been corrupted for the second half, so we only ever know what the first half is. So when Lex Luthor finds out about his ship and goes to it and recovers the damaged material from the engineer, we do find out what the second half of the message is, and we do find out that his parents were not kind in the second half of the message. He was instructed to do a lot of things that would have basically been Lord Superman's dream, but Clark Kent of this universe is an absolute nightmare. So we got to find out about that part, and it's Lex Luthor that exposes this for a lot of people. And what I just don't necessarily like is that a lot of people within this universe, they should technically be very cautious of Lex Luthor, because even at this point, he's not entirely been a good person. And they instantly turn on him, and it was very aggravating to see that. And then, two, what was really difficult to see and very difficult for me to necessarily understand was when they were talking about, what were they talking about? They were talking about how they found this out and how they translated it. And I was like, how on earth do you guys know Kryptonian? How on earth can I trust these translators? Because I'm being so serious, guys. If there was a dead language and there was someone coming to this earth, maybe from this earth, helping a lot of people, right? And a billionaire came up and said, this person is not to be trusted because I recovered the dead language that they don't even fully know themselves, and I was able to translate it, and this is what the true message is. I'll be like, can I trust that? Because how do I know you're just not lying? How do I know that these translators are not being bribed? They're not being blackmailed? They're not being anything? How do I trust that you have somehow recovered this very, very ancient language? So that was an interesting thing to see. I don't think it's the plot hole. I think I just missed something. It's really hard sometimes when you're in the cinema because you're taking everything in and trying to remember everything that's going on can be a little bit difficult. But it was okay. It was fine. It was whatever. I was still really enjoying myself whilst watching it. And I think one of the notes though, it is probably true the whole mob mentality that they did show how quickly no one really questioned anything. And see, this is the weird thing about it because I'm not normally someone, I don't like questioning people who have degrees regarding certain subjects. Like, I do think you should always approach everything with an open mind, but I do feel like I am in no place in to make myself seem like I'm correct over someone who has been studying, I don't know, astrophysics for a very long time. So I do get that, but it's just the instant hate. No one was like, hey guys, should we just like, double check the references? Can you, um bring this out for like a group understand, like for example, I didn't necessarily like the Jurassic Park. I promise you guys I'm going somewhere with this. I didn't necessarily like the Jurassic Park film that we got this year. I loved it because I love Anthony, love Scarlett, so it was great. But it wasn't my favorite plot in the world. And one thing that I did really appreciate with it, because I don't know if it's because I'm older or I'm becoming more aware of these topics, but again, I really did love the messaging in it. I love the idea that this medicine that could potentially come from dinosaurs was supposed to be public knowledge. This was something that should be studied across all industries, not one private company. And I loved that message. I think healthcare is something that should be open and provided and shared with everyone. So I did love that message. And I think that is something that I would have necessarily not implemented, because I feel like just because you don't necessarily understand or like something in a film doesn't mean it wasn't like pertinent to the film. I think just because I don't understand how that worked doesn't necessarily mean it was a bad aspect of the film. Um, I think it did work in well with how the film operated in the end, and it did end up guiding the storyline well, because there were certain things we weren't just supposed to focus on, and that was particularly one of them. Anyway, as you can see, I know I'm just looking for the film, but I'm creating Lois Lane's apartment. I did decorate all the apartments in this one round. That's why it's such a long video. But I am making Lois Lane's apartment, and I was really trying to play into the fact of the whole punk rocker kind of vibe that there was in Rachel Brosman's interpretation of Lois Lane, which is I've loved almost every single. I think I've loved every interpretation of Lois Lane, but Rachel Brosman was my favorite. I don't know, she was just so cool. She was really really cool, and I liked how there was. I don't know. I just really liked Lois Lane. I really loved it, and I tried to make her apartment quite particular to her style. So she talked about how much she loved punk rock and how much of like she was just kind of almost like she's quite strict at the beginning of the film, and not strict in a way that it's like unfounded. I think the way she confronts Superman, well, Clark Kent, but it was Superman interview. When she interviewed Superman, I love the way that she confronted the argument, because it is an argument that almost anyone would have. Who is Superman to decide who lives and dies, who to save? Obviously, as a Superman fan and as someone with clear empathy, I could see his need to intervene in that situation because people were going to die and he just wanted to stop people from dying. So I was always going to be instantly on Superman's side, but I can understand from the perspective of someone who doesn't, one, is from journalism, and two, doesn't really have this almost omnipotent understanding of this character, would question this specific character. I think that's why we can forget sometimes, because I did see a lot of people critiquing Lois Lane's interrogation of Superman. I think we forget that we have this very omnipotent understanding of Superman. We know his Clark Kent, we know his values, we know where he can go, and we also know him in multiple universes, we know what it would take to get him to become dark, and we know where his mind lies and who he is as a person. But Lois Lane only knows Clark Kent, and I think the relationship was indicated as being quite new in the film, so she only knows him as Clark Kent and Superman quite new, so she doesn't understand why he would be so passionate and why he would be, I would say, in oftentimes quite thoughtless within his not thoughtless because he's everything he does is quite thoughtful, but quite reckless with his actions because it is just emotions first for him. And I can understand why Lois Lane is a bit apprehensive because how about if something happened to her? And I mean, if we look at the multiple dimensions, like I said before, we've seen what happens when someone deeply hurts Clark Kent's closest friend. What he does, he becomes this overbearing, he lording over the entire planet type of figure. So I think it's good that we have Lois Lane question him. And I think also in Justice Lords, I could be wrong, Lois Lane is already dead in that universe as well. So it's not like he has someone else like questioning him either. I think the closest thing he has is Batman in that world. And he just, I think he imprisons him. He also takes over his mind. It's just a whole bunch of things. Most of the Justice League listen to Superman in Justice Lords. It's Batman, but I think is that the one where he's Lord Batman or is it? I don't know. I'm getting my so many universes mixed up. But yeah, so it is like it is interesting. It is interesting, and it was fun to see Lois Lane interrogate him. And I just really love Rachel Roseman's interpretation of Lois Lane. It was just a whole bunch of fun, and I love seeing the chemistry on screen because they had a lot. They had a lot, and it was really fun to see that as well. Only because most of the time I am an avid anti-romance in superhero films type of person, and you're probably thinking, "Oh my God, who are you?" And it's in any instance, I don't necessarily like when romance is in films in superhero films or in action films because I feel I hate the damsel in distress trope. I think one of the people that does that trope so well um is potentially Daphne from Scooby Doo, just because you know that it's something that she puts on. It's not necessarily something that she falls into, and it's always balanced as well because it's not like Fred or Scooby or Shaggy or Velma are particularly overpowered against Daphne. I think they just all have this mutual strength within each other. So the fact that she particularly becomes the damsel a lot, it's not because necessarily the other characters are more important or anything like that. They all are equally important to each other and they can all find that balance and save each other. But within superhero films or action films, there's always like a weird power imbalance for it. And I don't know. I've never liked it because it's been like, I don't know. It's just always felt like a weird sidetrack. I think damsel in distress tropes are also greatly more explored in superhero TV shows. So as you guys know, DC has a lot of those, and those work out a little bit more just because you can see how there is damsel, whether they're masculine or feminine presenting or whoever within these shows. You can see how that is balanced more out with the heroes. Like for example in Supergirl or within the Flash, you can see how it balances a lot more because you get to know more about these characters. And one thing about Lois Lane's character within the comics is that it's not the fact that when she finds out Superman she becomes more reckless. She's always been reckless. It's just now she doesn't actually change. And I think that's the thing that I've always particularly been a bit weird about damsel in distress characters is because they change a little bit once they find out this particular person in their life is a superhero. They become more reckless. I hate that because there is other things the superhero could be doing, but you becoming more reckless because you know they will have to save you first. But Lois Lane has always been a reckless person. She does not care. She's gonna go after the story where she needs to go after the story, and she just happens to get into trouble half the time. And I just love that for her. I really, really love that for her. So yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm already decorating Clark Kent's apartment. Has it really been almost 45 minutes and I feel like I'm only halfway through the story? Yeah, but yeah, that also, did you see the little I won't call it an Easter egg, but did you see the little Easter egg in Lexicorp's mini laboratory? I made it in the style of basically where Connor Kent would come out of. And if you guys are wondering where Connor Kent is the biological child of Lex Luthor and Clark Kent, and that is Connor Kent. Wait, yeah, that is Connor Kent. I'm confusing. I was going to say that's John Kent, and John Kent is the biological child of Lois Lane and Clark Kent. No, Connor Kent was made in a lab, and he it does make an appearance in the Superman film, which I was shocked to see. I should have guessed it, but he does make an appearance in the Superman film because then we find out again spoilers that he was the person who Superman was fighting in the initial first act of the film, and that is why him both his strength and both Lex Luthor's just obsessive understanding of Clark Kent's fighting style is what ultimately made the basically the perfect villain, the perfect antagonist for Superman in the film when it comes to fighting. But just a quick rundown because I've been just talking about a whole bunch of nothing. Apparently, when I focus on the film, I still managed to talk about a whole bunch of nothing. Is that there is a also another quick Easter egg before I go into that. I did do Cat Grant's and Jimmy Olsen's tables as well within the Daily Planet as well as Perry's office, but I've also kind of made Perry's office the place where you would also interview people. So I kind of just did a mix of both because I couldn't have separate spaces because I wanted to make the upper floor where they would do the actual broadcasting part, even though I know that the Daily Planet is mainly paper slash web slash blogs slash articles based. I did I do remember there has been certain instances where Lois Lane will go onto a scene, specifically in this beautiful bright yellow blazer set, and she'll go into the scene and she would normally talk about what's going on. And I just thought that would be an interesting thing to have within the actual build itself. I was able to implement the is it growing together? No, it's high school years windows, so it can actually look like Clark Kent is about to leave his building and fly off and save the world and everything like that. But just to round off the entire film, there is multiple parts in the film where you just keep seeing Superman pushed down. He gets tortured, he gets kidnapped, he gets continuously misrepresented through I don't know, like the defamation cases are high if he ever decided to sue people. There is just so many instances in the film where Superman is just pushed down over and over, but he never gives up. There is a point where he is being tortured to an extent that you genuinely like, dude, it's okay. But he is always by his word. He's not Klaus Michelson or Elijah Michelson. He keeps his word. He rescues the kids. He makes sure that everyone is out of there safe. He always keeps his promises and he always continues fighting and he's always upholding his strength and he's always honoring his parents, his human parents, so Martha and John Kent. So it's just a really great film, and I tried my best to make it in the way that Metropolis should be looking like. But again, I don't know much about Delaware because I know it's inspired off of Delaware, and I know it's supposed to be basically the river that separates Delaware and New Jersey being where Gotham is. But I tried my best, and I really wish I could have made it in the style of the 1940s. I tried to implement it a little bit because I used one of the roof elements we get in high school years at the top because that has a lot of Gatsby inspired equipment built by items, but I wasn't completely able to do it. But I hope you guys really like this. I think this is my new Gotham. This is gonna be what I'm gonna be talking about all the time when I talk about my favorite builds because I really like how this came out. But again, when I think about Gotham, I really do like my Gotham build. But yeah, I'm gonna be doing more like superhero comic inspired, film inspired things, and I'm gonna be doing more sit downs where I talk about films and build something that inspired me off of the film because this was a whole bunch of fun. I did not think I would be able to talk for 45 minutes if it was anything else. But yeah, I really hope my audio was okay this time around. If it's not, I think I just need to buy a new mic at this point. But yeah, I really hope you guys like this video. Everything will be up on the gallery. within the next 48 hours. Always remember that. If it's not up right now, just come back in 2 days. It'll be up definitely by the end of 2 days. And yeah, this is my interpretation of Metropolis. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe it. If you don't want to, that's also okay. I appreciate you staying this long and listening to all of my ramblings. Also, don't forget to leave a comment down below. I read all of your comments, the more the merrier. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Also, guys, completely forgot. EmeraldStories game code. Put it in checkout if you want to give me a little bit of a commission. But if you don't want to, that's also okay. I appreciate you. I'll stay in the song and listen to my ramblings anyways. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye. Bye.